Hello and welcome to a new episode of On Air with Daikin. I'm Matteo Lombra, your host, and today I'm joined by two very special guests. First, I have Charlotte Lee, Chief Executive of the Heat Pump Association UK. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Thank you. And then I have a person that does two jobs actually. And so let's go in order with all the job. So we have Chris Taylor Amlin, who is a colleague of mine, first of all. So he's a senior Environment Research Manager for Daikin, but also happens to be the Vice Chair of the Heat Pump Association UK. So welcome, Chris, to the show as well.
Thanks, Matteo. Good to be here.
Right. So where do we start? I feel like this is one of those other episodes where we could go on about hours and hours and talk about all sort of heat pumps. But I guess let's start with how you ended up being the chief executive of the Heat Pump Association. I always like to try and get a bit sort of behind the scene of what is the journey of people working within, let's say, the building industry, because of course heat pumps that's where they are installed. Just give us a bit of a peek behind the curtains of what was your journey here.
Absolutely. So I joined the association just under 3 years ago. So it'll be 3 years this April. When I joined, it was the Heat Pump Association. So we'll touch on the rebrand shortly. But my previous background was in policy. So I did policy and international relations at university. And then I worked for a consultancy firm that was specialising in renewables and microgeneration specifically at that time. So my first sort of career choice led me to heat pumps, and one of my first clients was a big heat pump manufacturer. So I've always had that sort of in my knowledge bank. And I did that for a number of years and supported a trade association who represented microgeneration and small-scale renewables. And then my life choices took me north and I got married and had some children and worked for a certification body. But again, that certification body had an interest in heat pumps and small-scale renewables, as well as electrical safety. So that's what I did for 10 years. And then I guess I decided that my children had got a bit older and I was ready for a new challenge and something to throw myself into. And the job was advertised for the chief exec of the Heat Pump Association, and I went for it, and here I am nearly 3 years later running the Heat Pump Association UK. So yeah, it's been eventful 3 years, but extremely interesting, and has definitely sort of ignited my passion for decarbonising heat, but also, for getting things done.
That's nice. And yes, we'll definitely deep dive into the Heat Pump Association, all those sort of things. But I guess, Chris, as well, do you want to give us a bit of your background?
Yep, can do. I prepared for this sector with 25 years in a completely different sector, albeit with advocacy, compliance, and trade body work, principally in the bathroom sector. So prior to that, building studies. So I've got a sort of like a general overview of buildings. I spent time doing land surveying. I spent time doing civil engineering before moving into testing compliance with solid fuel, ironically, and measuring heat outputs of products, similar to what you might do with a heat pump. Ironically, that was for British coal, so we've come full circle, right from solid fuel now over to
decarbonisation.
Exactly that. So it's been an interesting journey, but the skills that I've built up over that transition have been incredibly useful as I've moved into this sector. As somebody who would consider myself a technical person, I'm still very non-technical when it comes into heat pumps and understanding what's going on. I'm very much about that sort of like lobbying activity, trade body work, and interacting with government. So again, a great fit for hopefully the support I bring to the VC role within the Heat Pump Association, Heat Pump UK. HPA UK, sorry.
Yeah, very new to the name, aren't we?
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
We're all
this week was
it was.
So sorry, Heat Pump Association UK.
That's it.
Yes, we'll put it down in all the descriptions, all the notes,
Brilliant.
so people know exactly
My
what
bad.
it is. If we revert back to just use the acronyms for use. But one of the reasons why I always ask this question, yes, I'm curious by nature, but also I try to, or what I would like to try is sort of remove some of the, I don't know, myths or some of the unknown from someone that wants to approach the building industry and maybe think, oh, I need to have such and such background, or I need to be technically and all sort of kind of things. But so far, the conversation I had, people came into the industry from all sort of different origin, all sort of different directions. So it's also nice to kind of give the background and essentially say, well, you might not know what the building industry is about, but chances are you might have skills that will transfer and can be used in the industry if you want to jump in and try to make a difference. So that's why I always like to start with that as a bit of a icebreaker. But let's start with the proper discussion, I guess. So really, let's dive into the HPA UK. What is it? How we ended up with the HPA UK? Where are we coming from? So I know, and probably people that are within the building industry may have heard about, may have read about the merger and the transformations of the associations. So can you give us a bit more context to that transformations? And
definitely.
Where are we now?
So I think it's really important to start with by saying that, where we have ended up is as a result of a number of years, pre me being involved as well, and I think where we started is a situation where we had 3 trade associations that were all representing slightly different aspects of the heat pump sector, but all with an agreed aim. And that sort of agreed focus and ambition was that heat pumps offer a proven, scalable, efficient solution to decarbonising heat. And the ultimate aim of all of those 3 trade associations was to grow a sustainable market for that product. And that sort of solid or grounding and agreement within the 3 associations has allowed us to get to where we've got to today. I think what's really important to note is, as the sector has grown, I think so has that ability to merge. We are now in a situation in 2025, if the data does what we expect it to do, to have sold over 100,000 heat pumps in the UK in a year, whereas in 2019 we were at sort of 30,000. So that growth in the market, that maturity in the market has enabled a more sort of focused discussion on what we want, what the sector, what the members want their trade body to do on their behalf, and being able to unite into HPA UK and provide that unified single voice for the market, I think is a really powerful signal of the maturity of the market and where the sector is set to go over the next decade.
Just as a bit of a context, mostly for our listener, just in general, when we say heat pump association, we are referring to all of the technologies, all different type of heat pumps, sizes, shapes, and so on and so forth. Because the only reason I'm saying this one is because, again, trying to demystify the industry, and sometimes people refer to heat pumps as the small domestic ones, not maybe realizing that actually large industrial plant, they're still heat pump fundamentally in terms of the technology of what goes on underneath. So I just want to clarify that point.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point in terms of the merger and the new organisation be able to move forward with one voice and use that voice also to interact with government and to make sure that hopefully we are transitioning in the right way and that's sustainable and meaningful, and that we can ultimately meet our 2050 obligations for net zero, but also as part of that and that transition, establish more sort of like secure energy supplies in the UK where we're not subject to market forces on fossil fuels, and that would be a very, very good move for the UK.
And I guess, to dive into a bit deeper, we do represent the entire heat pump industry, as you said, and our current membership is made up of heat pump manufacturers, energy companies, installation businesses, auxiliary and component part manufacturers, software companies, training bodies, certification businesses, awarding organisations that develop those training courses. So, we stand to represent the complete heat pump supply chain. And the premise for that, I guess our premise for our existence is the understanding that buildings across the UK will vary enormously. There is not one size fits all model for a property and a particular heat pump. It's their age, their size, the location, the use, that will all feature into what heat pump solution is best for that property. And, we are able, as a result of the merger, and one of our sort of the key benefits I see of the merger is to be able to split, or we've sort of split the sector into 3 core groups and applied dedicated resource and focus to each of those segments of the market. So as you were mentioning there, residential is a core and is a big growth area for heat pumps sales at the moment. That is one of the sectors that we focus on, and members that are interested in that group. Commercial, industrial and public sector. So that's another sort of one of our segments within our work that we do, and we've got dedicated resource provided to that market to support the technological advancements, the policy, the standards that will help grow that market. And then the third segment is the shared ground loop, low carbon heat network drilling aspect. And again, they will require that all of those segments, whilst there is areas of overlap, of course there is, but they require nuanced positions, slightly different policy asks, different technical standards and focus. And merging everybody, so we've merged the Heat Pump Federation, the Ground Source Heat Pump Association and the Heat Pump Association. So those were the 3 that existed into HPA UK. And so we've got those 3 subsectors within our association. Members with an interest in all 3 can engage in all 3. Members with an interest in one will focus their time on that one core bit. And we develop our work and support the members through working groups so that the members can directly influence what we're doing for our outputs, and also hold us to account. And we report to them in terms of what's happening in those markets as well. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits of what we've managed to achieve over the last sort of 2 years into this merger is having a clear focus and clear strategy and groups and people for each of those areas. And we will not, as an association, say, that heat pump is suitable for that property. That is ultimately a consumer or a business choice. Yeah. And is well below where we act as a voice for the market. That's a commercial decision that individuals will make based on a number of factors, including cost and efficiency. And our job is to make sure that whatever that consumer chooses, the standards and the policy and the support mechanisms are in place to enable that installation to be of good quality, and to help that consumer in the way that they expect it to help them.
Fair enough. How easy is it to get everybody to play along nicely?
There's a debate. There's a forum, a process, a debate. Depends what the issue is. Some issues are obvious and you can get to consensus relatively straightforward. Other issues, maybe not so. And maybe on occasion, and Charlotte will know this better than I, but sometimes the association has to sit on the fence a little and say, hey, we have some members on this page, other members on this page, so there is no 100% consensus. But again, feedback into government, they know what the position is and why. So it's not just about always having consensus, which would be nice, but it's also about being able to clearly indicate where there isn't consensus, because that's also informative.
Yeah, absolutely. And we found actually within the association that in the vast majority of cases we can find a compromise position where everybody can agree, and where we don't, we do make that clear. So, not everybody's going to agree, because the commercials of life mean that, everybody has a different ultimate aim. But, the purpose of a trade body is to try and find that common ground and to amplify a collective consolidated voice. And it has been really pleasing to note that, members come to meetings with that mindset. It's not my view or no view. It's, okay, well, I'd prefer this, but actually that would work. And it has been, and we run workshops and forums and gather the views and draft. We're very engaged with members in that sense, to give them a lot of opportunity to rephrase and influence and how we position the voice. So that is one of our, it's one of our core responsibilities, I think, as a trade association, to do that. And we get a really good interaction and response from the members, which makes it easier. It does make it harder if lots of them are saying different things, but it also makes it easier because you understand where they're coming from, to enable you to rephrase and reframe things in a way that is palatable. So, and I guess without our members, we don't exist, right? So the trade association is owned and operated by its members. They set the work plan.
I guess each of those members, they will bring their own nuances to the party that you may have not think about, and maybe other members would have not thought about, so that we can almost raise the issues from the ground up and help inform how we want to see things change.
Yes.
I guess. And I see a parallel very much to some of the other policy that we've seen in the building industry, things like, Part Z, or the UK net zero carbon buildings, which is always a mouthful to pronounce, but things that really came from within the industry, because the industry and the people working within there, they say, okay, I see there's a gap, there's an opportunity, I want to change. Let's pull resources together, let's work together to inform a change. Yeah,
there's definite added value for the collectivism. And certainly if you're looking at a government consultation, you've got a whole group of people with different experiences bringing that into, as well as the HPA staff experience, which isn't inconsiderable. It creates a good discussion point. Two, maybe somebody else has thought of something that you haven't. So it's sort of like the output, I think, from those sorts of workshops is invaluable for this sector moving forward, and to help inform government too of what's going, of what the market forces are, or what the policy might unintendedly sort of like lead to. So again, there's a lot of work that's incredibly valuable that HPA UK does with regard to those aspects.
I guess question that just popped to mind. The more we talk about sort of HPA UK, what is the relationship between the HPA UK and the rest of Europe?
So we engage as the HPA UK with the European Heat Pump Association, and the recent Director General change, or it was last year, Paul Kenny is now in post in that role. He came to our conference in November, so we have a really good working relationship with the European Heat Pump Association, and it's not the EU Heat Pump Association, it's Europe, so we do get included in, as a
geographical
voice.
Europe rather than political.
Good.
Thank you. Yeah. And it is interesting, we do a lot of comparisons with an engagement with them on what's happening across the border, and what that means or not for the UK, use cases, best practice examples. And we feed our data into their data as well. So in their annual reports, we get, UK data is in there. Where we struggle, I guess, or not struggle, where we differ is, since Brexit, the European rules don't automatically align or apply over in the UK. And we have seen areas where the EU have made changes that GB or UK haven't, in the same time zones. And there are a number of recent consultations actually that really impact manufacturers, that have quite considerable differences proposed from EU to UK. And in my mind, I'm thinking eco-design and ERP labelling is one of those areas. F-gas is another. And what we call it over here, Smart and Secure Electricity System, SSES, the interoperability requirements for electrical saving appliances, of which heat is is it energy saving appliances, of which heat is electrical heating is one.
Yeah, smart energy appliances or smart heating appliances from our perspective in terms of heat pumps.
And the rules and regulations around those three core areas are looking like they will differ between EU and GB, and that poses a problem. And when members get together, what I hear is align with the EU as much as we can, because the products that are sold on an EU market are invariably very similar to the products sold or the same with a different to the GB market, and any deviances or differences between those requirements adds cost. And if the UK market isn't big enough to sustain those costs or that extra R&D development by the manufacturers, then there may be some dropout, which isn't good for competitiveness of the UK heat pump market, and isn't, is not where we want to be. But, you're better to talk about the practicalities of that.
Yeah, look, if there was commonality, great. Okay, we've got to sort of like accept the political reality that the UK has moved out of the EU. And in some cases, that might be advantageous to the UK market where there are inherent differences in the market anyway. Like typically we're single phase over here for domestic supplies, whereas many parts of Europe are three phase. Okay, so that makes a difference in the market. But there are other things, like with eco-design, that if we do something different over here, does that appreciatively make a direct benefit to the end user? If it doesn't, what is the actual value of trying to do that? So there's an element of sort of like trying to understand where the EU is going, or in the UK, trying to understand where the EU is going, what the UK government wants to do, and whether it's best to follow Europe or to try to do something different. That has varied in terms of the government, depending on the colour of the government, timing of the government, and what they think their output should be. Sometimes it's relatively straightforward. Sometimes it's a painful process to go through that and to respond to consultations with, actually, this has a big impact. You need to understand how that works. Again, one would like to think as a unified trade body, the more that we do that and the more that we interact with government, the more trust is built up that we're not saying things for the sake of it. Actually, we're genuine in trying to help the UK achieve its goals at the best bang for buck, if you like, for the end user.
And certainly that's the other advantage of having that now single voice.
Yes.
That you can see what's happening differently around us and inform in one area.
Yes.
But then also, as we were saying, like collect all the feedback from the UK voices and bring it up to attention and saying, let's not forget about these problems and how can we improve. So what would you say would be the key main new changes of the new HPA UK? So on top of just saying, okay, we go from 3 to 1, but what else, let's say, practically has changed and that we will see changing moving forward?
Yeah, so, there have been some changes, and as far as I look at them, they are all positive. So the reality of what happened was HPA Limited remains the trading company, and Ground Source Heat Pump Association and the Federation have merged into the HPA Limited, and we now trade as HPA UK. And in order, that was done for a variety of reasons, mainly ease of and cost of sort of creating a new business and business structure and registration and bank accounts and all that good stuff.
That's the legalese.
Exactly. But in terms of ensuring that was fair for everybody, we have rewritten the Articles of Association and the membership agreement that underpin how HPA UK operates. And core to that was the governance structure. So we will be introducing a governing body committee, which is a board. So there's a directors, and then there's a governing body committee, which is made up of members that is much more representative than our previous board was. So that governing body, there is a wider group of members that can elect people to that governing body committee. There's the ability to co-opt members so that we can ensure that there is a representative view from all of the sectors of the market. Even if that isn't elected, they will be able to be co-opted on. And there is a space reserved on that governing body committee for an SME installation business representative, so from an installer viewpoint, who typically wasn't heard at that sort of top level of decision making in the association as it was, and that's been changed to enable that to happen. So the board that decides what we do, when, and how we spend the money is much more representative of the whole market. So that's been a really big positive change to where we've got to. We've enhanced our team, as I noted earlier. So we've now got more people able to focus and specialise on those 3 core areas. Those 3 core areas have very much been, set out, and the new association has been designed around ensuring that there is, equality, I guess, between those 3, and that they're all heard and represented. And then I guess we have a new name and a new website and a new logo and all that fun stuff that I guess is required to show that we are new and that we have changed and that we are, moving towards what we are now, unified and a strong, powerful voice. But in terms of sort of the previous HPA team, we remain the member offering and the principles of our working, which is collaboratively, data-driven, member very much leading the way in terms of engagement, all still stand. But the big changes really are that new board, which is much more reflective, and the clear vision of those sort of subsectors that all have a focus but are ultimately still combined into that sole voice.
Yeah. So in terms of getting involved with the HPA UK, so members are companies, right? So, but as an individual, is there opportunities to get more directly involved with the HPA? How would that work? What could be?
Do you mean any
for example,
individual, or do you mean other employees of, say, for instance, Daikin?
Yeah, or from other company. Like for example, in your case, that you are an employee of Daikin, but you also have a role within the HPA. So for example, what was that journey for you, and what would be then someone else working for the manufacturer, for example, wanting to go on a similar journey?
So fundamentally, my role within Daikin is to engage with trade bodies, engage with government, and so on, all of those things. So I'm very eager to get myself to meetings, be involved in meetings, offer a Daikin opinion into those discussion forums, as we said. Okay, that's naturally what I'm at Daikin to do. So that's quite straightforward. And I've been engaging through the executive policy meetings, through the face-to-face meetings and technical forums for the whole time that I've been at Daikin. Having said that, we also have other Daikin employees that are attending some of those executive meetings, or they might be attending technical, or might be vice chair of technical as things stand today, other people that are attending the training meetings and the marketing meetings. So it isn't me attending all the meetings. We do have other Daikin employees attending the other aspects of the Heat Pump Association's work with regard to the different forums. Most of the companies that engage are in the same position. They're picking people with the specific expertise, whether that's in marketing or whether in training, to sort of like input into those areas.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to do that if the member company is understanding the value of the association. And personally, from my personal experience, both with HPA UK, but also my 25 years of experience elsewhere, the more that you input, the more that you get out. It's incredibly important to be prepared to engage. It's incredibly valuable. If you don't engage, you won't see the value. Do engage, you do see the value. And the HPA is always very welcoming to anybody new. There are no stupid questions. If someone's got a question.
Sometimes there are stupid questions, but
no, there's not. There's not. There are no stupid questions.
No, not enough.
If somebody doesn't understand, we need to help them, because everybody needs to be on the same page to actually move forward. So genuinely, there are no stupid questions. Let's help people understand. You might feel stupid asking the question. That's different. That's different, because it can be perceived as a difficult thing to put yourself front and centre. Especially if you're not naturally gregarious or whatever. But we welcome input at all the meetings from anybody. Please, any member that already attends or is thinking of becoming a member, if you're not already one, come to meetings and please engage. Feel free to input. It's incredibly valuable that we understand as part of the whole process that sort of like that input from all of our membership.
And what we'll do is that we'll gather some of the resources, we'll link them in the descriptions, and when we publish the episode, people will also be able to go and see where they can go to sort of get more information or get more involved.
And I guess just sort of one of the other, big changes since we've launched HPA UK is we have reviewed the membership structure and the member categories. So there are different membership categories that entitle people to different benefits, and they're different priced. they're priced accordingly. But all that information's available on the website, and it is predominantly an organisation-based membership, but there has been an individual sort of affiliate membership that's been introduced for those that have perhaps retired or want to keep in touch with what's going on but don't have a business to join through. And yeah, we can link to that in the detail, but it's not a anybody with an interest in accelerating the deployment of heat pumps in the UK is welcome to join HPA UK.
Wonderful. So as we record this, we are at the beginning of 2026. What's the association look for 2026? What are the main challenges or the main focuses?
You want short term or longer term?
Both.
We
got time. We can.
Short term, I'm guessing the focus, correct me if I'm wrong here, Charlotte, Warm Homes Plan and Future Home Standards in terms of output expected from government in the relative short term. The sooner it comes out, the better.
Okay, so we are recording, just to give context for everybody, we're recording when it's end of January.
20th.
The episode will probably go live beginning of February. So things may have changed between the time of the
It would be nice if the Warm Homes Plan is published before this airs. It would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, we can bat on it. I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
But I think, in terms of, so the outward facing policy asks of the association for 2026, as Chris says quite rightly, are to have the publication of the Warm Homes Plan, which we've been expecting since spring 24. That was the initial sort of target date for that publication. And that's really important for the market because it will set out what this government's view is on how to accelerate the decarbonisation of heat.
Sorry, can you give, maybe again, for the benefit of our listener, a bit more of an insight of what the plan is supposed to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess for those that were following what the previous government were doing in terms of heat in buildings, they published a heat and building strategy, and that set out a trajectory for accelerating decarbonisation of heat. And you may have heard 600,000 heat pumps installed per year by 2028. That figure featured in the previous government's heat and building strategy. And as it stands at this point in time of recording, we haven't had any real clear documents from this government on what they see their vision and the future for heat in buildings is. And that's what the Warm Homes Plan will do. It will set out what policies and priorities this government will introduce and has in terms of that journey to decarbonise heat. And it not just heat, it will also look at sort of energy efficiency measures and how to reduce consumer bills. So sort of PV and batteries as well, we're expecting it to touch on. And it links back to the Labour Party's manifesto pledge of supporting up to 5 million homes become more energy efficient or become more, clean. So that's how the Warm Homes Plan will fit. We did expect it to not just be about homes, but despite the title, it was going to be a sort of buildings plan. We're not sure where that's landed. It may just focus on homes with a future iteration looking at buildings, commercial sort of buildings, rather than it feature in this plan. But I think we'll wait and see. But, the effort that's been put into this plan is huge, and it hasn't been without its challenges in a world where cost of living is key, and budgets are really tight. And we know that the Treasury have been scrutinising, the plan considerably. And in autumn last year, we saw some announcements within the budget that would directly impact this plan in terms of government funding 75% of the renewables obligation, which was currently funded by a levy on electricity bills. So taking that into sort of HMT funds will have an impact on the electricity price, which we know is really crucial relative to gas in terms of the attractiveness of heat pumps for running cost. And we also found out in autumn that the government were going to not renew ECO, the Energy Company Obligation 4, which is due to run out at the end of March. And they allocated an additional £1.5 billion to support low-income vulnerable households at that time to mitigate for the lack of ECO going beyond March 2026. So the Warm Homes Plan will set out what the government's going to do with that money. They got a £13.2 billion settlement in the Comprehensive Spending Review, plus that additional £1.5 billion from Treasury in autumn. So they've got around £15 billion to spend in this arena before 2030. So the Warm Homes Plan will set out how they see that funding being spent. So that's why it's crucial. Yeah. It might not have all of the answers, but it will set the direction. Which is really, really key. And then future home standard.
Which is actually, especially if I put myself in the shoes of a manufacturer, that's 90% of what we need, like a clear direction of where we want to go so that we can be ready to support that directions with products that can fit whatever plan looks like. The biggest problem is uncertainty. The idea of saying, we could go in 75 possible different directions. Off you go.
So part of the issue has been for this sector that we've had clear direction, 600,000 heat pumps per annum, but no clear direction on how to get there, or market stimulus on how to get there, or reduction in electricity prices to help us get there. And I think those are still some of the issues today. The Warm Homes Plan sort of like fills in some of those holes and clearly identifies those pathways. That could be a significant boost to not only this sector, but to the economy and the advantage or value add that brings to the economy from transitioning, as well as I said before, sort of like national security from an energy perspective as well. So there's a whole load of collated benefits should we get this right.
Yeah. And I think to your point, Matteo, the direction of travel is really important, and that long-term plan we've been asking for is vital. But without the regulation to back up that plan, to almost guarantee the delivery of that plan, I worry that we won't get the investment that we need in order to meet those targets. So whilst the vision is vital, we will be looking out for what's monitorable, what's trackable, how is that going to be delivered? And I guess that's what will shore up the investment as well, because I think, over the past 15, 20 years, there's been a lot of plans that then get changed every 5 years when a new government may or may not come in.
So it's part of the job of the association to also essentially keep government accountable?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, key to... Yeah, absolutely. And, consultations will happen under a previous government and then never be responded to and forgotten. And we flag and we track and we, push for certainty on the areas that they've sort of proposed. But I think what's really key alongside the Warm Homes Plan is the Future Home Standard, which is the regulations that will effectively require, if they are introduced as proposed, or prevent future gas grid connections for new build houses. Now, there will be transitionary periods and it will take a while to come in. But even so, when those regulations are laid, that then provides the market with certainty of a market share of product within a set period of time, and allows that ramp up to be done with much more certainty and it's essential to building up and scaling the supply chain. And we believe it's coming in spring this year. So we will keep our fingers crossed, and we know it's not easy, and nothing, if it was easy, it would already be done. But those are the two big policy asks. I think the third is electricity and gas price ratio being rebalanced or reduced, but that is really, really tricky from a political point of view. And we are seeing, a move towards grouping products, so heat pumps with solar and batteries, to allow optimization of running costs and utilisation of the flexibility aspects, the flexible tariffs that we're seeing. to mitigate that risk, rather than relying on anything meaningful, I guess, to be done with regards to the electricity and gas pricing. So, there are ways around that. That would be the sort of golden key, I guess, to this market. You make it economically attractive, and that's and off we go. But it's much harder than that, and the realities of it are very politically challenging, and I'm not underplaying those at all.
Just for some context, if we started fitting heat pumps to all new build, we'd effectively double the size of the heat pump market overnight. Yeah. Okay, so neither the heat pump market today for retrofit or the new build is a massive sort of like section of the total housing stock within the UK. You're looking at 1% in terms of new build, for instance. So that sort of like policy driver to sunset fossil boilers at some point and to fit heat pumps into new build is really key. When we compare, and this was mentioned at the conference actually, but when we compare other countries that have had a more successful rollout of domestic heat pumps, invariably policies start with how you start with new build. And if you get that policy set for new build, you do get trickle down that enhances the market and helps people understand actually it is a technology I can rely on. It is a technology that works. We do have the answers, and there is a roadmap on how you can actually transition existing homes to decarbonise.
And I guess the reason for starting with new build is, and probably people that listen to this podcast, they might be fed up with me saying the same thing over and over again, but what I always say is that the heat pump in isolation as a device is not the solution to the problem. Like, you really need to look at the full building and how the heat pump is applied to the building. And it can only really work really, really well when you think the two sides together at the same time. So that you design a certain building, either residential or commercial or whatever it might be, but with the technology in mind.
Yes.
So that the final result is the one that can squeeze the most out of using an heat pump. If you just say, I've got a building, let's just slap a heat pump onto it, job done.
Yep.
That's where you then end up with the problem saying, heat pump don't work, or they're not as efficient as manufacturing saying that they should be. So I guess that's why the reason you start looking at a new build where you can have a more impact on the full thing, the building, the envelope, and the technology. And then you see how you can translate some of those to existing building and how to improve existing building a second phase.
Yeah, without wishing to oversimplify, obviously the heat pump's the engine, but the connections from the engine to the heat emitters is critical. The size of the heat emitters is critical. If you don't look at the system as a whole, you end up with something that can easily not work. So there is a little bit more effort involved to get the correct engine and the correct connections and the correct heat emitters. But it can be done, and it can be done in older properties too.
Absolutely.
But you've just got to think about the whole solution rather than just part of the solution, i.e. the engine.
Yeah.
Whereas new builds, you're designing from scratch, aren't you? So you can design it
blank
optimally,
canvas.
Exactly. And the new build market has been referred to as a no regrets approach to to decarbonising, and every house built on the gas grid currently is one that's going to have to be retrofitted in 20, 25 years time. So it really is key for this government. They have committed to introducing it. I don't think they're backing down on that. It's just a case of making sure the regulations as drafted are introduced in a way that is deliverable for the majority of houses, and it's not the clean heat bit that's affecting that as far as we can tell. But if it's delayed for everything. So we've got positive vibes on the Future Home Standard. It's just a case of timing. But again, they said autumn last year. They said before the end of the year, which went into winter, and now they've said spring 26. So each delay does cause risk and
uncertainty.
So, exactly.
As we were saying before.
Yeah. I think the other interesting thing, if we listen to the rumours and think about the expectations of Future Home Standard, Charlotte's already mentioned from the Warm Homes Plan, this sort of complementary technologies of heat pump and PV. That's what we would expect from Future Home Standard as well, that new build won't just be heat pumps, it'll be PV as well. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole sort of complementary set of technologies that deliver sort of like warmth and comfort, but also means that you don't get massive bills. So, you know, they're addressing the sort of the disparity of electricity to gas costs by mitigating that with PV. And that's a good thing as well. It gives, again, confidence that people have homes that are warm efficient and cost efficient to run as well.
I guess the other sort of, if we're on policy area that we are really interested in the two. There's a lot going on in heat network space at the moment.
Right.
So there's technical assurance standards, consumer protection codes that are being drafted and introduced, and there's a lot of funding ring fence to support heat network trials and delivery. And you know, they're massive projects that take a number of years to get off the ground and to install and implement. So you know, you're really in that for the long term if for the investment. So we are engaging in what role heat pumps will and can play in, you know, low carbon heat networks for ambient systems, but also to be able to pump prime or raise the temperature for you know, other heat network technology types. So interested in what's happening there, and there will be lots of policy development over the next year around that and the rollout. And then also, you know, we mentioned earlier commercial and industrial, you know, the scope for heat pumps within commercial buildings and industrial processes is growing massively. You know, there are heat pumps now that will, you know, get up to temperatures that will enable them to be installed in industrial situations for process heating. And commercial buildings, they seem to be, you know, being left behind really on the policy side of things from government.
Sexy in terms of a policy point of view? I don't know, or you don't think about it because, you know, everybody has, well, not everybody. Homes are, like, let's say your primary need in a sense.
Yeah.
And so they're like front of mind. Commercial building, I guess people just assume, well, they exist, but I don't know, they're less front of mind maybe? I don't know.
I think there are challenges around ownership. You know, a lot of them are leased properties, and then how that would impact the market if, you know, certain requirements were put in place that would impact costs specifically. We are seeing some commercial buildings, you know, decarbonise due to ESG requirements that they're putting on themselves and the movement there. The Committee on Climate Change recommended that the public sector should go first to develop the learnings and the experience that could then be rolled out more easily across commercial buildings. And I think there's also an expectation that commercial buildings would connect to heat networks, and they would almost provide a primary load, a bigger load, because they have a bigger usage. So we are interested in what the government are looking to do to support non-domestic decarbonisation, and will continue to do that.
I don't know, maybe from a funding point of view, that maybe the assumption is homes, like public, you would want the government more directly involved than commercial building. You might have like private foundings, investment firms, whatever, and they might have sort of easier access to funds.
Right, it's probably a more diverse market from that point of view.
Yeah.
Although, you know, if you're looking for exemplars, if you like, we did have the the decarbonisation fund, which is, as a policy, has been sort of like withdrawn, and that sort of like placed obligations on local authorities to decarbonise, right, and that was sort of like pushing that market somewhat. You know, one, there was a demand and a policy for them to do it. Two, there was money for them to do it, and three, you know, there's an expectation, actually, and a legal obligation that they have to decarbonise. So that was sort of like set in a way. Having lost that policy, it's much more difficult. I do think, and interestingly, one of the sort of like new hires at the HPA UK has some keen interest in all of this sort of like green finance sort of area. And I think that's going to probably grow as an area that we need to look at to try and stimulate that part of the market.
And also, I mean, at the end of the day, doesn't really matter what the building is. The direction should be of decarbonisation.
Yes.
Full stop.
Yes.
Anyway, no matter what sort of primary usage is for that building.
In terms of, so those are sort of our key policy areas of focus for this year. But as an association, we've got a number of others. So our sales data collection programme is an exemplar, I think, you know, within the sector. It is a factory sales data collection programme. So we collect data directly from the manufacturers, or we don't, a third party does, to provide that independence and confidentiality. And it splits down into air to water, monoblock air to water split, ground and water source heat pumps, domestic hot water heat pumps, and then there's an other category which collects exhaust air heat pump data and integrated hybrids. So we collect all that information in and report it out to the contributors, and I'm pointing this way because Daikin is one of the contributors, but also as a manufacturer, but also we provide that data to our members more frequently than we publish it, and monthly is the most frequent iteration of that. We are enhancing and improving that sales data program at any opportunity we can. So last year we split out domestic hot water heat pumps from the other category, which allows us to report space heating heat pumps, so heat pumps used for space heating. And why that was important for us, we felt, was because when the government say things like X number of heat pumps per year as a target, they're talking about them used for space heating. And the government do reference and refer to our data as the sort of number of units sold across their suite of publications and impact assessments and reports. And we also broke down the number of heat pumps that were sold in the UK that were made in the UK. So those were the sort of two big ticks that we managed to deliver last year in terms of that data collection programme. And we're awaiting the 2025 final figures that will come out shortly, and we'll update our website accordingly. And this year, what we want to do is drill down further into bands or sizes of heat pumps sold above 20 kilowatts. So we currently do sort of a general over 20 kilowatt category for the marketed size of that capacity for that heat pump. But that doesn't give us such granular data for that commercial industrial market. So over the next 6 to 9 months, we will be working with our members and our data collection, that third party independent team, to look at how we can do that, to break that down, to get better insights into that commercial industrial market, which then helps us engage with government, and especially the Department of Business and Trade and DESNZ are really interested in what's happening there. So that's exciting
plenty of things to keep you busy.
Plenty of things to keep us busy, yeah, absolutely. And I guess the other one I wanted to flag, which I'm excited about, is the importance from an association's point of view of making the case for heat pumps beyond carbon. So whilst we all know that heat pumps are incredibly efficient, scalable and a proven technology, and really help in terms of reducing the carbon emissions from heat, which is why they are often billed as sort of the primary or pivotal technology in this move to decarbonise. The focus on carbon can be politically challenging because it's quite hard to be tangible for individuals who are effectively the voting population, the electorate. And it's also not giving the complete picture of what the benefits of the heat pump technology are, or decarbonising heat in general. So we will soon be publishing a report. At this stage, it's just focusing on the residential market because, as I was saying about the commercial data, we need that broken down in a bit more detail, but we will look to expand it beyond residential. But effectively, that sets out the economic and the societal benefits of accelerating the deployment of heat pumps and, electrified heat in general, actually, for the UK economy. And I guess, the headline figure is by 2035, if heat pump deployment matches the targets set out or the ambitions set out in the government's carbon growth and delivery plan for aligned to CB6, Carbon Budget 6, there is a potential £10.3 billion worth of economic growth for the UK as a country, which includes considerations around reducing the amount of fossil fuels that are installed and increasing the amount of electrified heat, which is made up of predominantly heat pumps, but also, direct electric systems as well. So that will be published shortly, and we're really hoping that this year that will make a big impact for how this journey to decarbonised heat is viewed more generally amongst politicians, but also stakeholders. And it's not just seen as carbon, which, despite the legally binding, net zero target by 2050, can be called into question.
Yeah, that's massive, because that's probably been my biggest challenge since I've started working in Daikin, which is how do you translate in layman terms, essentially, what the EPAM is actually good for.
Yeah.
Because as you said, it's very intangible in many. So we say, oh, it has a SCR, an SUP, or reduce carbon this way. Yeah, but what does that actually mean?
Does it
It's
mean
like
to
in
me?
practice, at the end of the day, how do I take all those wonderful number and translate into something that is actionable, that really sort of make a difference and showcase. And it's great to hear as well the impact that delivers to the economy of a country like the UK, because again, it's normally, I don't know, in our little world, we have a product that we try to sell for the right reason, but we don't always have the possibility to have that bigger picture. So
Yes.
it's great to be able to be provided with that bigger picture, because I guess, at least in my opinion, it also kind of incentivizes manufacturers to continue doing the right thing, continue to evolve the products, continue to push for the technology, if we can show all of those benefits.
I think the other thing is, when you talk about the average person or lay people, then it's what you would say about decarbonising, because you make heat pumps, you want to sell heat pumps. Yes, of course, but this is showing a general benefit to the overall UK economy, and that shouldn't be underestimated. In an economy that struggles to grow, this becomes increasingly important. So, yes, it is costly to decarbonise, but actually there's a net benefit to all. And I think if we can sort of like really hit home with those messages, again, to the politicians, but also to the general public, for them to understand what's going on here in bigger terms, that is very valuable.
Yeah, and I think on this wonderful news, we can close the episode, because as I was sure, we've run out of time, and I knew that we were.
An hour goes very quickly,
know,
doesn't it? Yeah.
I know. I knew that we were not going to have any trouble in filling that hour. So Charlotte, again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It was wonderful to have a chat with you today. Chris, likewise.
Good to be here.
Again, we will have links to all the resources, other elements that we talked about in the description. So if you're not, get subscribed so you don't miss all the upcoming episode and all the previous one that we released. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next episode. Thank you very much.